Welcome to our weekly Data Talk, a show where we talk with data science leaders from around the world. Excited to chat with Priyanka Jain today. Priyanka, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. As I shared with you, I'm traveling right now in India, so I'm logging in from India and doing good.
Awesome. So you had a full day. It's like 9:30 p.m. So I'm grateful to you that you're even joining our show right now. It's 9 a.m. here in California, so we're in totally different time zones. So thank you so much for jumping on. so
Absolutely.
so you were just teaching a class?
Yes, we just finished teaching a predictive analytics machine learning class, and we do that like now live online. So, yes.
We were emailing a little bit, and you had mentioned you'd saw one of our recent shows around data literacy, and you're like, "Hey, Mike, we got to chat because data literacy is on my mind."
You know, it's the organizations that are coming together to realize that they can't they can't fully stay in the digital game without upskilling their people. You can't, like, let's say our insurance organization, insurance company, 100 years old. Insurance company, average tenure of people in your organization is 25 years, 30 years. People have come from a place where they were doing manual, getting faxes, doing claim, from there to the new digital world where everything is digital, everything is sitting in a process somewhere, and you're doing digital, everything in your world, you're basically processing claims digitally,
Yeah.
e-signing to, everything is basically digital. In this new world, people need to be data savvy because the new insurance company, which has just been spawned 5 years ago, the product managers and the claims analysts there are coming in and logging in. The first thing they're seeing is their dashboard and figuring out what's happening with their claims processing, what's happening with their ticketing system. In order for these old, mature, giant organizations to keep up with the newer, let's say, insurance company. This is one example. This is one industry. One example. The old and the mature organization has to find ways to essentially be able to give skills to their employees to be able to leverage the same data set, leverage the same power as the newer organization. Otherwise, they will see their margins going down, their growth going down. Slowly they'll start selling up their businesses. This is what we are seeing with our client set. So I think more and more organizations are realizing that you cannot not upskill people to different levels in data science. And that's where we come to data literacy. So when we talk about data literacy, it's not like one size fit all. Everybody needs to be this level 7, right? Think about it as, somebody needs to be data literate 1, data literate 2, and we have different personas that we've been, as we've gone to the organizations, we have definitions, we've developed personas as we have encountered people, like, certain job titles need to be only a data enthusiast, other job categories need to be data educated, others need to be data literate. So we have created these personas. But that's one thing important to know, that data literacy is needed. We can't get around it. You can't fire all your employees and find the new ones who are data literate or data savvy. And so the larger organizations need to find a strategy to upskill their employees so they are able to leverage the latest and greatest of the digital world. In order to be optimizing their profits, the growth, or whatever success metrics they're going.
How often should, obviously for these different roles, you're going to need more or less data literacy, depending on how you're working with data. But how often should employees be getting training to keep up with the types of data coming in, how to maybe analyze it, or even those that are, they don't necessarily need to be working with data, but they need to be data literate. How often do you recommend that they're getting training, they're being tested to make sure that they know the terminology, kind of best practices with using data in their enterprise?
At this point where we are in this maturity of data literacy, it's almost like a 0-1 game where do you have the right skills at this level to be able to leverage data? When I mean data literacy, I'm not talking about do you know tools, right? I'm talking about mindset and terminology. And once you know that, once you've made it your own, and I'm also not talking about data literacy as in you've gone to a training, for a half day, one day, you came back and you've like 3 days later, you've forgotten all about it.
Yeah,
I'm talking about real data literacy, which means that you have learned and upskilled in the context of your own business. You have done some sort of use case based learning that has made this whole learning your own. Whereas, it's like once you know how to bake a cake, you've done this step, you went to a class, they told you how to do it, then you did it yourself, then you came back and your boss was ready for your next cake, and you did it again in your workplace. I don't think once you've done that, you'll ever forget how to bake a cake, right? Especially if you keep baking those cakes. It's the same way. What individuals want is the right level of upskilling happening to them in the context of their business. And in the context of the business, essentially, so that they can make this their own. And then eventually, and the tools part, like, okay, now we got skilled up in, now I'm a citizen analyst. Let's say I'm a citizen analyst. Today I'm using Power BI to get my data and manipulate it in Power BI or Excel or whatever have you, and I'm making some decisions. Now tomorrow I get some new tool that the organization has some newer tool that they have used. Maybe tomorrow the whole organization shifts to Tableau or something else happens. My data literacy is not about to go away because it's not tool dependent. It's my methodology dependent. It's something I know. And it's if I knew how to access data in one tool, I may need to learn, pick a few hours of a course or something to learn how to access data from the other part. But it's not about being able to access data. It's about how to use data. And that learning should not go away. Now, a citizen analyst may need to, at some point, transition into more advanced skill, like maybe level 6 needs to go into level 7. And that would be a use case focused again, right? Like your job takes you to a place where you need to go from level 6 to level 7. And that may be the reason to sort of upskill yourself, right? But in terms of level 6, if you need to be in level 6, it's a 0-1 game. You have gotten level 6 training, you start using it, you're not going to lose it.
I think in this day and age, if you want to be competitive in whatever field, you got to constantly be educating yourself, constantly have that growth mindset of what can I do better, what's out there, how can I better use the data that I'm given. I need to be aware of the tools. I need to be aware of the different methodologies. I think that's essential. How much would you say is it on the employee to just be responsible and like, look, if I'm a driven person, if I want to be constantly growing in my career and be successful, I'm going to do this already. So how much is it on the employee versus on the company to be like, I need to be investing into the people?
Yeah. I mean, last 5 years, we've seen it's been the world of Coursera's, right? Where people are taking courses on Coursera's, Udacity, all MOOC courses. So last 5-6 years, we've seen that individuals have taken upon themselves to say, wait a minute, what is this big data? What is happening? Where is this new tool? What is this in cloud? What's going on? And people are upskilling themselves. I think next 5 years and decade. So that's a good, that works, but it's not scalable because people can't take the learning back home in their workplace, right? Like, let's say I took a course in learning how to visualize using Tableau. But if I come back and I don't have an opportunity to really use that, and I'm being asked to usually just keep making decisions quickly and run with it, that course didn't really help me. So I think next 5 to 10 years, what we will see is employee-focused upskilling, where their employees, the leadership is thoughtful on, who needs to be where in their data literacy journey, and what is the outcome that we're expecting. And also, it's not just about me being able to manipulate data and get or use data. It's about also orientation of the organization towards success metrics, right? So everybody has top metrics. Every organization has top metrics, but has it cascaded down to individual? Let's say I'm a product manager. Do I know what metrics, how my work is moving the top metrics of the organization? So unless that tie-up happens, I can be A's data scientist, I can be A's citizen analyst, I'll still not move the dial, right? So there's a lot more to data literacy than just upskilling and building a culture of data. There's also this whole aspect of decision making. So I'm going to simplify it. Michael, there are 4 Ds of data culture. There's the first one is data maturity. Do you have easy access to a single source of truth? And I've said too much in that one line. Do you have easy access to single source of truth? And it's in that one, it's not a 0-1. There is a journey that people go through in data maturity. Today's world, the data maturity has come a long way, where people do have some form of access, even if it is not fully reconciled, and some source of single source of truth. Maybe there's a few version, when how we look at activation has 2-3 version, but we are coming closer to that. So data maturity is pretty much solved. So that was first D of data culture. The second is data literacy. Now that people have access to data, are they able to manipulate it, use it to their advantage, to have meaningful discussions with their peers, to make decisions at their level that they are making, right? So that's the data literacy. The third part of data culture is data-driven leadership. And that could have easily been the first one, because without leadership being data-driven, without the top metrics, without an organization having the analytics agenda, without them having a lineup of how metrics sort of line up, and also without them holding their team accountable, without them being data driven, not just giving a lip service like I'm data driven, but like really being data driven, where you're curious about your customer and product and wanting to make innovative decisions and innovations based on that, that will not go anywhere. So data driven leadership is sort of the catalyst that moves the organization from wherever they are to being really data driven, right? Data, having a culture of data. We call them data elite, right? And the fourth one is fourth D is data decision making process. Is there a process by which organization is making decisions forward and looking back at their decisions and learning from it? Because unless you have a decision making process, you can do all sorts of data analysis, but that will not filter into a decision making. The decisions are still being made randomly by gut, by sort of whoever is the loudest in the meeting. You're not going to be data driven, right? So there's more to this whole thing than just sort of one of the things that, Michael, I'm seeing people are doing, many organizations are doing, is we need data literacy. Let me send my entire employee set to some courses and get some courses off of Lynda or Coursera and let them send them to this training. All the employees now need to take this 8-hour of course or something like that. And they think, okay, we've solved this, we've done the data literacy. It does not work. That's a recipe for failure. And it's also a recipe for, usually employees are sort of get very unsatisfied with this, that I'm being sent to some training and then they come back and the business is as usual. So that doesn't work very well.
It seems like that's like the easy solution. Oh, well, there's a Coursera course on machine learning. Go take that.
Yeah, and become machine learning expert.
Right. As long as you take that course, you're going to do, our company is going to be okay as long as everyone's taking their Coursera courses.
Yeah,
that seems to be the kind of the easy way to go about it, because you don't, at that point, you're putting all the education on, well, we're spending money on Coursera. We don't have to worry about changing anything internally at our company.
Yes.
Right. It's much easier to go outside.
Yes. Like just go fix that problem yourself. Like it's almost like, and that Band-Aid approach does not work. So organizations who are really committed to this journey to take their organization to become a data elite, or towards that, to become a digital native, as we call them, you need to think through this very well. And it doesn't need to be like, 5-year process. It can be done. I mean, we have worked with organizations, and within 9 months, we are moving the top metrics and making at least a small sample of the organization data literate and data culture heavy, and we start cascading it to the rest of the organization. You don't need to oversolve it, but you need to think of it systemically instead of a patchwork and saying, let's give them some training, or let's show some videos, or now give everybody some or the other access. Like it cannot be this sort of like random and just patchwork approach.
what's also really what you're saying is it's not about taking, I mean, sure, taking those courses can keep you educated on methodologies and tools, and that's all extremely useful. But for companies, like you have specific use cases internally, you have certain types of data sets, you have certain ways of using data to abide by regulations and rules. Like this is where it's got to be specialized for your company, because the external classes are great, right? To stay educated, and that's really important. But like how you work with it internally and the types of data that's available to you, like everyone needs to be talking together.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more than that. It's a common vernacular. It's also contextualized to their own problem. It's also about learning things which are business focused, because most of the time when I've checked out some of the courses in Coursera, they are fairly academic in nature, and it really doesn't translate very well to the business, because business doesn't come and say, build me a machine learning model, right? That's not the use case. Or what you have in business is, hey, we are having significant churn issues since last year, what's going on, right? And how do you take something like that and put your data to work is a very use case, business focused, job ready approach, versus I've taken some courses and I can write few lines of code in R, or I can call some I can install some packages and call some libraries, and it's a lot more than that. That's needed.
Now, I feel bad we're like talking about Coursera. There is a place. Can you talk about like,
Right.
so like, right? There's a place like
Yes.
staying educated, taking those
Yes.
online courses. There's
Yes.
a place for that, right?
Yes. I think it's like I talked about. Last 5 years saw the rise in Coursera, Udacity, Lynda, many other MOOC courses. I think there's a place for sort of starting to build your initial muscles. It's like learning to write A, B, C, D. Like I can now identify A. I have a 5-year-old, so I can start talk that language. She's just beginning. She's like kinder.
Oh.
She's just gone into kinder, and she's just had her 4th, 5th week, I think. And so she's like she's drawing this G, and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
So there's some foundational learning to write G, getting familiar. At least she believes that she can read and write now, right? So that's the really good belief. Right, and then she's saying, I'm not scared of reading, and I'm going to try to identify IN in, all of that. That's what I think these individuals who have taken upon themselves to learn that. I think that's very, very appropriate to start learning, like the foundations of what things are. But from the enterprise perspective, if you really want to become digital native, digital, digital elite, data elite, and to start leveraging that data that you have internally, that's not going to do it. Just sending people to some courses out there, because there is you need the leadership to be aligned, you need the data maturity, you need the literacy which is built on skills and capabilities mapped to job levels, appropriate level, and use case based learning, and you need a decision making process that pulls it all together, right? And that's where you will see. And like I was sharing, it's not an overnight journey, but it's not like a 5-year-old transformation. You can do it in the, sort of, you can get to a very significant place within a year if you do it right, if you do it systematically and systemically.
Wow, and I think a year is even fast. Who within the company in leadership is really should be the person kind of leading this charge?
That's a great question. What we are seeing is typically it's the mandate of CDO, Chief Data Officer, Chief Digital Officer, Chief Analytics Officer, Chief, sometimes CIO as well, CISO, CAO, basically heads of data and heads of like data science are the people who are typically mandated with this. But again, it's not their agenda. It's typically coming from the CEO who's saying, we need to be data driven, because otherwise we're going to be losing this race, right? So I think it comes from the CEO office, but it's usually, in my experience, in the way we are working with our clients, it is sort of operationalized and sort of put in motion by the CDO, digital or data office, in conjunction with we typically work with that team, that office, and the L&D, learning and development folks, hand in hand. Three of us, three groups together we come up with, when we go into the organizations, we start with the assessment of the data culture first. Then we go, once we do that assessment, we also in parallel are doing voice of executive, understanding how the organization looks at data literacy, as the assessment tells us where they are right now. And then we also figure out from the organization's perspective where they want to get to. And that's how we define the path forward. Like, this is where they're at, this is where the biggest gaps are, and how do we move forward to where they want to get to in terms of individual or stratified learning agenda, with skills and capability matrix in it. And then the other important thing we do is when we go into the organization, we have sort of like a half-day, one-day workshop with the executive. We make sure that we have a very clearly identified analytics agenda, and that sort of translates in the top projects for the organization. And that once we have that, then we make sure that as we are upskilling the people, it's lined up to those the particular project and that particular the success metric. So that's how we are able to get results. Like within 6-9 months, we are able to move part of the organization that much forward that they are moving by their own work. They are moving the top metrics for the organization.
When you first start out, and I think it's a very smart approach, you're doing the assessment on the organization, which I guess could include surveys, talking with, doing interviews with people.
Exactly.
When that audit assessment is done, and you come back to the heads of data science, you're like, okay, here's where we're at. Here's where we see big needs. When you kind of come back with them and are talking about like where the needs are in the organization, where do you typically find like the biggest? Are there typical things like, oh my gosh, like there's a big need at this lower level that everyone needs to get a better understanding of the terminology and some of the basic methodologies that we're using? Are you looking at like level 1, or are you seeing like, oh, we got to really start doing heavy investments in these level 4 or 5s where they're using data on a regular basis?
Yeah. And so you're specifically talking about data literacy. When we do assessment, we do in all the 4 Ds. We're also looking at the data maturity. We're looking at the leadership. Are you just giving the lip service to data, being data driven, or are you really wanting to be data driven, right? So we do really good double clicks on it, right? Because we don't want to come back and give them a false view of what their situation is. We also look at decision-making process. Do you have something which is structured, or you are individual leaders, directors and up are making decisions with their own gut? And we do it in all 4 Ds, not typically just data literacy. And the failure is very varied. Previously when we used to do this, we saw a lot more failure in data maturity. I think data maturity is becoming less so now in REDS. It is coming up for the organization that we are looking there now. Most organizations have many organizations have moved to cloud. So they are able to scale it well. Many organizations have gone to sort of taken out the legacy system and have gotten their systems in place where they are at least pulling data in a data lake, and many organizations have some form of access, easy access, right? So data maturity has come up, I think, in last 5-7 years. Data literacy is still missing significantly, and the biggest roadblock to all of this in terms of data literacy, the two roadblocks. One is the data-driven leadership, the lack of data-driven leadership. If the leadership is like, the CEO is like gung-ho, like we need to make our organization think and act data. But there are key folks in the organization, like a head of product, who doesn't quite believe in anybody knowing better than him and his gut, and he's pretty convinced that he knows it all, he or she. We have a problem there, right? So data-driven leadership, if the lack of data-driven leadership can really and those people, we call them data skeptics. So they occur in any level. They can be in the leadership level, or they can be at individual level. But data skeptics are very to the health of data culture, to the health of building that, they're really poisonous. They're really hard to get around, right? It's one thing that I don't have the skill, but it's the other thing that I don't even believe that I need the skill, right? Or I don't even believe in the data. So data skeptics are really, really, they can derail any good, well-meant, systemically planned data literacy project or data culture project. So if there are many data skeptics, and especially at higher up in the organization, that needs to be really addressed. Their leadership often needs to be coached and sort of brought up to the new world. And sometimes they need to be replaced, unfortunately. So, that's, I think, is what we are finding. And then there might be, typically if the organization is willing to do it, then it's not a matter of, oh, we really don't have level 4s and level 5. It's like, okay, these 150 people job with that particular job title need to get to, data educated level. These 200 people need to get to, and these 2,000 people actually just need to get to data literacy, right? And these like 70 data scientists need to be ace data scientists, right? Like, or data scientists who are not being effective, they need to get to a place where they are being effective data scientists, right? So we just need to create a stratified learning solution and then sort of execute on it. And we have a method to execute on it. Again, use case focused and very much, it's built on a framework. I think last time I was here, Michael, when I was talking about, I forget now what I was talking about, but I mentioned a framework called Badr. And what we are finding is, because of our data literacy work being focused or being based on a framework like Badr, it's a 33-point process that basically marries data science with decision science and makes a recipe out of how do you deal with data. Because we have a framework, because of this framework, which is a hypothesis-driven approach, and it gives a common vernacular to all different levels. Data literate people also get the same sort of, they understand the Badr at a different level. Data scientists are using Badr, citizen analysts are using Badr, but at different levels, we are able to quickly upskill and get people up together, talking in the same room, they're talking the same language, and making progress.
How are you kind of measuring success of these programs? What are like the KPIs? Because we're talking about data here.
Yes. So I'll tell you, I'll be honestly and frankly sharing with you all of our failures. So when we started this 7 years ago, we used to think about data, building a culture of data as equal to training. So we used to do trainings of,
Sure.
7 executives here, like the top executives, or, we have an executive session, or 100 partner sales solution team, or 200 product managers there, or, like that's how we approached it. And we trained people, and we had good success in terms of pre and post. We used to measure, of course, data being the analytics company and data science company, we used to have a pre and post, good surveys, pre-work, post-work. And, used to see a delta in their perceived or their stated understanding of the, understanding of the space. And people loved our training, and we got good success, but from that perspective, success, right? But when we started looking at, did it move the dial? Did this organization become data-driven? Did it move any key metric for the organization? We were failing, essentially. So, and that was truly unsatisfying for me to go in and invest time and resources and get to a place where, oh, good, we did training, that was awesome, but doesn't show up anywhere. And so that's where we started developing and looking further into where are we failing. We started partnering with, we onboarded some key teams from key folks from L&D. We started looking at culture, data, changing this as a change management, data changing, becoming a data culture as a change management process. So we did a lot of learning ourselves, and that's where 4Ds came into place. That's where our entire process came into place, where we realized, or at least this is how we measure success. We measure now success with the success of the organization. So let's say there are 5 metrics or 3 metrics that the organization is going for. Their 3 years mandate, they need to move growth, they need to improve their customer satisfaction, they need to decrease their claims payout, they need to improve their activation, whatever it is. That metric, the same metric of the organization, is the metric of success for data culture and data literacy. If we are successful, we should be able to move those metrics by significant amounts, right? Because at the end of the day, we're not doing this for the sake of doing it. We are doing it for a reason.
Right.
It's a complete revenue focused, it's a selfish approach for an organization to do this. Why should they train their employees?
Right.
Why should they upskill their employees? Because it'll get you benefits. It'll get you more profits, more revenue, more whatever. So if we do it right, it should show in the top metrics of the organization. And so that is our key metric now.
Wow.
As we measure it.
Wow, that's hardcore. Because like originally the way that you went about it to me seems like the logical thing. You're providing training to the organization. Yeah. You can do surveys beforehand, surveys after, even a check-in 3 months later.
Yes.
Get satisfaction scores. Get exactly. Like, yes, this is helping me. Like that makes sense to me because that's like. Yes. That's like training. That's how you know.
That's like training, and that's what we did.
You've learned it. You've learned the tool. Now you're using the tool.
Yeah.
Tying it to company performance. That's much more difficult.
That is difficult, but that's where it's real, right? Why would I, when I'm having a conversation with the CDO and saying we need, once the CDO recognizes that they need to do it, why would a CDO invest with us, invest with any data culture organization, if it's not going to benefit at the end of the day to move some of the key metrics? It's not for the well-being of our organization. No, it's more than that, right? It has to hit the bottom line or top lines in some ways for large-scale investment. And it's just not even dollar investment. It's the time investment. The individuals need to spend time doing this. Leadership needs to spend time making space for it, right? If that kind of commitment is needed, it has to be for some good ROI. It needs to show somewhere in the organization's metric, essentially.
I think also the hard thing about that too is, there are all these other factors, right? Whether a business is going to be successful, there's all these other factors. There's sales, there's R&D, there's things that the company's doing, there's what the competitors are doing. So all those other things, right, can be excuses why, right, the training wasn't successful according to your metric of, is the company doing well?
Yes. However, when you equip a sales strategy person with the right level of data literacy, and she has some space to do this proper analysis, she will be able to do complete competitive analysis. She will be able to look at internal information and their pipeline. She will be able to sort of build a case for the management to make significant shift in decisions. That's possible. So it's, whatever is happening externally and internally, the individual employees should be able to deal with it and incorporate all of that in their individual decision making. Now, it's not going to be 100% overnight. People will build their cross into this and build their skills into it. But the more and more they do it, more and more these exogenous factor will not be a limiting factor for the organization. They can no more say, we are losing share of wallet because this new competitor came and completely ate away because of this new feature. Because somebody, a product engineer, product manager, sat and understood that and looked at the context of building the product in the context of feature and how important that feature was, because they were able to analyze their own internal data set and saw, and VOC, voice of customer data and survey data, the customer was asking for this feature. All that will happen automatically if you just, it's basically your upskilling for intelligent decisions to happen, essentially.
I like that. That's a good way of looking at it. So I was chatting with someone recently, and we were talking about how we're starting to see some organizations that are developing data center of excellences. And these are placed, and I think these are companies that are like heavily invested in their employees. They're doing what you're saying. Like they're like, hey, we need to develop a stronger culture of data analytics. We want to make sure that our employees are educated on um, the methodologies and the data sources that we have to help us be more innovative, and also connect the dots between these different siloed business units that are all working with different data sets. Like, hey, if we kind of bring things together, we might be able to make some correlations and like be able to make some really cool things. One of your goals, like when you leave a company, as you are consulting with them and helping them develop a data literate culture, when you're leaving them, are you kind of like, okay, this is what do you need to have in place before you leave that company?
We need them to be fairly evolved on those 4Ds. And one of the Ds, Center of Excellence, Analytics COE or Data COE is typically what has already organically or inorganically been forming. Most of the organizations that we are talking to have some form of COE already existing. But just having that COE doesn't guarantee you to have a culture
That's
of
right.
data. In fact,
That's right.
The funny thing is that 3-4 years ago, the trend was get us a COE, let's hire 200 data scientists and give them this Google server or Amazon server, to put all the data there, and we will be data driven. And it doesn't work that way, because now what happens is maybe some places these data scientists are doing extremely academic and research work, and it's not actually teeing up to it's not teeing up to anything in the organization. I've seen that. I've also seen that they are doing amazing work, but they cannot be possibly there in every meeting, and so their work gets diluted because the rest of the organization is not data literate and cannot take they're producing the best of the models, right? But the lack of data literacy on the organization side, basically the organization is not ready, not consuming what they have even, right? So these are the kind of frustrations we see when we are going right now with our clients. There's some sort of COE already exists, but what they're recognizing is we have the COE, we actually got the best of the tools, we actually even gave access to people, but they're not using it, and we are not yet data driven, and a lot of frustration around it, right? So COE doesn't guarantee, and we don't necessarily, most of them have some form of it.
Yeah.
When we leave an organization is when we leave, what do we call leaving? But when we have left the organization in a way, they are fully empowered to continue that cycle of learning, right? So they have people who are skilled at the right level. They have sort of a data-driven leadership, which is evolving and becoming more data-driven and investing in that. They have a decision-making process, some form of quarterly or half-yearly or monthly ways of making decisions which are transparent across the organization, and have a way to look back and make course corrections, learn from it. And they also have some sort of data maturity in there, right? And then this learning keeps cascading down up. So we often leave folks with train the trainers. So the trainers are internal now, and they are coaches and mentors and trainers. We have built up some good, amazing content and structured way for people to consume that on some cycle, not some cycle that is examinable. And a very strong team internally, right? Not only just COE data scientists, but sprinkled throughout the organization, citizen analysts who believe in data, data enthusiasts, data literates, data educated, all throughout the organization, that the new person joining it has to join in to this fabric. Otherwise, they won't be a fit. Right? That's the key thing, that the new person joining in has a way to sort of merge in that fabric and continue that learning.
Priyanka, what advice or questions would you have for CEOs that are listening? They're hearing you talk and they're thinking, well, no, we have a COE. We're invested in data and helping educate our employees. I think we're doing a good job with that.
What I have found is, and through this journey of last 8 years of working with senior leadership, I have recognized that at some point, the leader, the CEO, the presidents, the C-suite, the key person who is making such a decision, their light bulb goes on and say that every individual person who's making a decision needs to have the right skill in my organization. And it's just not good enough to have like, oh, we now have invested in data and COE exists and we have good tools. Somewhere that shift happens for them, either through some conferences, or some people have had that shift reading my book, which I've heard that, behind every good decision, they've had some shift in their thinking, or some talk somewhere, somewhere that shift happens. Once that shift has happened, where they recognize that every individual decisions are being made in every corner of the organization, and they all need to be optimized for us to be fully leveraging the power of data, then it's an easy conversation from there on. Then it's a matter of how do we do it, right? And the 4Ds and our structure and method and all of that is helpful. In fact, we have lots of white papers for folks who are detailed white papers on how you do it on our website, airing.com. If folks are listening and want to download, it's available and it's free. But I think that shift in mindset is needed first for the executives to say, oh, it's not about I have spawned a data center of excellence. It's not about I have given them tools and now our data exists at least in some sort of lake. It's more than that. Are my individuals decision make? First of all, individuals who are making decisions, are they equipped with the right access, the right skills, and the right environment that they are making decisions which are data driven? If they're not, if only the top high level decisions are being made and often not leveraging data, and we have pockets of, we have AI models somewhere in place, then it's not there yet. There's still some ways to go.
And like you mentioned, the first step is really doing that assessment. And I'm curious, for those leaders who have never done an assessment, how often should they be assessing their people?
Yeah, and typically L&D organization is typically responsible, learning and development organization is typically responsible for this, and they have some quarterly thing which is going on, which measures the skills and capability of individuals. Sometimes it's through a MMM, measures the metrics that matter, some other surveys that are in place. So those are things which are already in place, and typically the L&D team is deciding how, what's the cycle of that and what makes sense there. I think for us, when we work with the L&D team, it's more about sort of getting them up to speed with what skills and basically we are updating their skill matrix with another set of columns, if you might think like that, right? So, okay, communication skill is a key skill, right? Negotiation skill, or project management skill, or for product managers, a product management skill. Now it's data literacy skills, and there's of course so many. Data literacy is not one, it's many sub skills under it. That is what is needed. We just add on to their own cycles, that whatever their cycle is in place, we add some skills that they need to sort of stay afloat and actually match it at the right level. So skills and capability matrix gets updated. And that's one of the things, because of now our work with L&D folks over last 4 years, I would say, that we have evolved and we understand now specifically how L&D needs to look at it and how we can help, coming from the data science perspective, how we can help update that matrix to add to their usual surveys that are going on.
Listening, make sure you check out aryng.com. It's ARYNG. And Priyanka, what are some white papers or case studies leaders can find there?
It's called Data Literacy White Paper that we have, which is a detailed white paper we have there. We have lots of cases on data literacy out there as well. We have lots of cases of data science as well in terms of leveraging Bother, fraud models, conversion optimization. So lots of good stuff to read. And of course, the book Behind Every Good Decision might be a good stop. I've heard it's a pretty easy read. it's basically pragmatic data science. How do you do this not with the glitz and the glitz of the keywords here, but like really, like how do we use common sense all the way to more involved data science to start leveraging the data we have to learn about our customers, to learn about our product, right? So that might be one good, and it's available in Kindle as well. So Behind Every Good Decision is available on Amazon and other places for folks to leverage as well. And let's see what else. We have tons out there on, and lots of blogs are there as well. Podcasts are there as well for folks to listen in and listen to and see if they can learn about 4Ds are there. Oh, DIY, data culture assessment is also there, a smaller version.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so it's bunches there. So go explore and see what you might find relevant.
Awesome. And what's the best way for people to connect with you, to follow up, to learn more about the work you're doing?
So LinkedIn is a good place for folks to find me. If you type my full name, you'll find me there. Also, my calendar is available to be booked. So it's pjcal. PJ is my first and last initial. pjcal.airing.com. You can find time with me there as well. And if you are listening in, if you want to reach out to me directly, you can email me as well. My first name @airing.com. So priyanka@airing.com is another way you can reach out.
Awesome. Folks, check her out. Make sure you're following her on LinkedIn. Again, you can find her just by typing in Priyanka Jain, Piyanka, Priyanka, and then Jain, Jain. And of course, you can also check out, she's the president and CEO of Aryng, ARYNG. That website has blog articles, case studies, all the things she was sharing here today. Get more details about the assessments, the 4Ds, the work that she's doing to help other companies develop data literate cultures. Priyanka, it's always awesome chatting with you. You're always doing some remarkable work, and I love just catching up. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day. You've had a long day, just finished teaching a class of machine learning and now jumping into a data talk. So thank you so much for your time, and hope we can catch up again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's always fun to talk with you, Mike.
Thanks, Priyanka.
Bye-bye.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of the Data Talk podcast. My name is Mike Delgado, and we record this show every single week on Facebook Live. If you found this show helpful, please let us know by rating us on iTunes. And if you want to know about past episodes or upcoming ones, you can always go to the Experian blog. The URL is just experian.com/datatalk. Again, that's experian.com/datatalk. And that'll bring you over to the page where we have a listing of all of our show notes and past episodes. We recorded over 100 so far. And we're also looking for your recommendations. So if you ever have suggestions around topics or guests you'd like to hear from, please let us know. You can reach out to us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is @ExperienDataLab, or you can just reach me directly @Mike Delgado. Thanks so much for your support, and thanks so much for subscribing to our shows.